The hour that ate 20 years. In 2008, California asked its voters a simple question. Would they approve a train that could carry them from Los Angeles to San Francisco in under 3 hours? They said yes. The price tag was $33 billion. The finish line was 2020. It is 2026 now. Not 1 mile of track has been laid. The cost has climbed past $125 billion, and some state auditors put the real number closer to $230 billion once every hidden segment is counted in. In July of last year, the federal government pulled roughly $4 billion in funding after finding the project had missed nearly every commitment it made. One state senator called it, on national television, a train to nowhere. California is not alone. A separate bullet train proposed to link Dallas and Houston has spent more than a decade in planning, land disputes, and funding gaps without a single passenger ever boarding a train. Two of America's most ambitious rail projects, on two different coasts, both stuck in the exact same place. Paper. Now look at the other side of the planet. China is planning something far more difficult than a train between two cities on dry land. It is planning to bury a railway 90 kilometers beneath the floor of the sea, longer than any undersea tunnel humanity has ever attempted, more than double the length of the Channel Tunnel between Britain and France. Two countries, two railways, two completely different stories about what it takes to build something today. A sea that refuses to be crossed. To understand why China wants this tunnel, you have to look at a map most people have never studied closely. The Bohai Sea sits between two Chinese peninsulas that almost touch. On one side, Dalian, a shipbuilding and trade hub in the northeast. On the other, Yantai, an industrial city in Shandong, known for electronics and marine engineering. In a straight line, barely 100 kilometers of water separates them. But there is no bridge, no tunnel, no direct rail line. To travel by land, you drive nearly 1,400 kilometers around the entire Gulf, a trip that can eat up 14 hours. By ferry, the crossing takes 6 to 8 hours and depends entirely on the mood of the sea. That gap has quietly throttled one of China's most industrialized regions for decades. This is where China's largest ports, its steel mills, its petrochemical plants, and its shipbuilders all sit, separated by a sea that treats them like strangers. So, in the early 1990s, Chinese engineers floated an idea that sounded almost like science fiction. Bury a railway under the strait itself. For years, it stayed a theory. File it away as too expensive and too far beyond the technology of the time. Engineers did consider a bridge instead. It was cheaper on paper. But the Bohai Strait carries some of northern China's heaviest shipping traffic. Tankers and cargo vessels bound for Tianjin, Qinhuangdao, and Dalian itself. Bridge piers planted across that route would have turned one of the country's busiest shipping lanes into an obstacle course. And winter sea ice in parts of the strait made the idea even riskier. A tunnel, buried safely beneath the seabed, gradually became the only option serious engineers were willing to defend. But then China changed, and so did what was possible. What China built while no one was watching. Here is where the real story begins, and it has almost nothing to do with the Bohai Sea. Over the past 2 decades, China quietly built the largest high-speed rail network on Earth, more than 48,000 kilometers of it. Each new line forced engineers to solve a different problem: mountains, fault lines, flooded valleys. Every solved problem became a tool for the next project. Take the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge, a 55-kilometer sea crossing that combines bridges, artificial islands, and a nearly 7-kilometer submerged tunnel through one of the busiest shipping lanes on the planet. Engineers had to keep that route open for thousands of vessels a year while battling typhoons and powerful currents. Or the Tian Shan Shanglei Tunnel, boring 22 kilometers through high-altitude mountains in Xinjiang. Or the countless tunnels blasted through the Qinling Mountains, where engineers learned to fight groundwater and fractured rock at a scale few countries have ever attempted. Along the way, something else happened that rarely makes headlines. China stopped importing the giant machines that bore these tunnels and started building its own. Machines like the Shanhe, a tunnel borer roughly 17 meters wide, big enough to swallow a 6-lane highway, now used on crossings under the Yellow River and the Pearl River Delta. That is not a small detail. It means China does not have to wait on a foreign supplier to attempt something this size. It can build the tool and the tunnel at the same time. So when engineers now propose twin railway tunnels under the Bohai Strait, roughly 120 kilometers long, it is not a fantasy sketched on a whiteboard. It is the sum of every hard lesson from the last 20 years. And the design itself shows how much thinking has gone into this. The current concept is not one tunnel, but 3. 2 would carry trains, one northbound and one southbound, kept fully separate to reduce the risk of a head-on emergency. Between them, a 3rd service tunnel would carry no trains at all, only maintenance crews, power lines, and emergency escape routes. Cross passages would connect all 3 every few hundred meters. So if a train ever had to stop because of a fire or a mechanical failure, passengers could walk into the protected service tunnel and be evacuated safely. A system similar in principle to what already exists under the English Channel, just stretched across more than double the distance. Even the physics of moving a train through a tunnel this long becomes its own engineering puzzle. A high-speed train pushes a wall of air ahead of it, like a piston moving through a cylinder. Without careful ventilation design, that pressure wave can hurt passenger comfort, stress the train itself, and generate enormous noise. Every dimension of the tunnel has to be tuned around a problem most passengers will never even think about.